Hello, and welcome to part 40 of this mod making series for the mod Locked Loot Containers. And yeah, it's been a little bit since I've made the last update video as well as the last video on this channel. It's been, I think, exactly like 28 or 29 days, technically, since it was February 1st when I last uploaded the other one. And now it is March 1st. So that was 28 days since February is a shorter month and all that. Or this year it was. So yeah, it's been basically a month since the last update or upload on this. And yeah, I just haven't really felt like, I don't know, making a video, I guess. I've just been kind of, during that time, I've been pretty, I guess you could say, productive on the actual modding side and all that. So yeah, I do have a lot of stuff that I honestly I don't even feel like doing this video today, but I figured I kind of got past a sort of little milestone in terms of like at least one feature thing. So I was like, you know what? The longer that I just put off making an update video, the more that I'm going to have to update about it, and I'll forget more about it. The stuff before that, so it's like I might as well just do it now. Screw it. Um, Even though it's probably not going to be that great. Uh, yeah, I guess we'll just try to talk through some of the stuff that I've done this past month, and I've almost worked on the mod like every day. Like I tried to every day. So my actual like the GitHub commits or repo or whatever, it has almost every day it has like some kind of commit almost. So yeah, I've been fairly consistent, or well, maybe not consistent on how much I get done in each day, but I've been consistent at least on trying to work on it each day. Um, so this was the first commit since the last update, and I said I completed the open effect related formula and logic. Basically for the actual like before the open effect worked and it was being detected and stuff, but I didn't actually have like it just always would work, but I didn't have the actual like math and stuff done and proper like logic to determine like okay, this is a success or that's a failure kind of thing. So I guess in this one on this day I basically I did like my best uh guess or assumption on what the formula should be, and just as spoiler ahead, like ahead for later, I guess. I don't know how long this will be, but I definitely need to work on these formulas more because I do feel like some of them are a little bit. Um, the chances are a bit too low in some cases, and the chances are a bit too high in other cases. So I do definitely need to work I mean, like the fact that I literally almost just kind of threw like numbers at the wall and just saw if it would stick. It's better than I expected, but definitely needs more work. And I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like in the end, but it's really not that crazy here. It's like me just trying to take into account a bunch of things that I thought would make sense. And in this case, for the open effect, I wanted it to be different than lock picking. Like it's a different thing, but it's a similar. It's the same kind of end goal, but a different way of doing it, with a much different method, I guess you could say. So I figured, let's try and make it fairly similar but different at the same time. So in this case, I'm not gonna go through like every single thing that I in this much detail or whatever, but I figure I might as well try to explain my logic. So basically, the main modifier for so the thing with the open effect is that's weird. I don't. I remember. I think this is how it worked in DOS Daggerfall. If I had a conversation with Interkarma about this, the open effect and how kind of weird it feels to use in game, because it's like the chance. Yeah, like the yeah. That's the thing with the spell is at least unmodded or whatever, the spell, the chance of success on the spell's effect is actually the chance of it succeeding the cast, not so much the success of unlocking the door. It almost has nothing to do with that part or whatever the locked thing, but in this case, it's the door. Um, in most cases, it's the door because that's the only things that are locked in the game normally. But the the chance of success is not based at all on the actual door unlocking part, but it's just based on if the effect will succeed to be cast. It's basically, I guess it's not that confusing if you've played Morrowind. It's almost exactly like that, is that the chance is just your chance of success and casting the spell at all, just as in Morrowind there's the chance of success or failure for whatever any other spell in the same way. But in this case, it doesn't actually show a buff on you when it succeeds, even though there is one on you. It's an invisible buff, like it doesn't show an icon. But when it does succeed, you are now in a state when you click on something, or at least when you click on, yeah, I don't know if it's anything or it's specifically for doors, but it basically when you click on something in that state with that open buff on you, it will check your level, and then it'll check the lock level of the door, and based on your level compared to the door's lock level, will determine if it succeeds or not. There's no dice roll involved in that at all. It's completely based on your character level compared to that door's lock level. So weirdly enough, there's doors that, at least as far as I'm understanding it, there is many doors, depending on your level, that will be completely unlockable. Besides with bashing, which is kind of baffling to me how that works. I really don't. I'm not saying anything like this is apparently how it worked for the most part in vanilla or in DOS Daggerfall. This is just how Interkarma tried to make it work different or work better, I guess. But I think that the cast of the buff should always succeed, but then the actual chance of the spell, like whatever, like basically its magnitude, even though it doesn't have magnitude, but the chance should be what is rolled against the actual door. That's how I look at it. It shouldn't really be based off of your level, because I don't like anything being level based for one. But as well, yeah, it's just weird. It's just strange. I prefer it to be a dice roll myself, because then once again it just makes against the normal locked doors bashing just basically the best option in almost every case. Like, yeah, it's strange. It's strange, but I decided to do something kind of similar to that. I was having some trouble getting the actual like effect. I don't think it's in this actual commit at all, but just talking about the open effect, like it is strange how it kind of works. But I was having some trouble getting the actual attributes of the effect that was casted, so I could use that for its chances. But then I was like, well, then it's also because the way, unless I'm gonna change the spell entirely, then it would be a double roll where it would be based on your success. I mean, in this case, it is a double roll anyway, but which kind of sucks. But I didn't feel like editing the open effect just for this. Even though I probably will eventually, but right now I was just like, screw it. So currently, you have to succeed on the open effect being casted on yourself, the actual buff, just like with the doors. But when you actually click on the chest, it will do another roll, which is based on this formula. And that is primarily going to be, the odds of that are primarily going to be determined by your current mysticism skill. One might say, why not alteration? Well, I thought the same thing, but then I was like, oh, wait. In Daggerfall, they have open and lock effects in the mysticism school, not alteration. So I was like, okay, let's just be somewhat consistent there and just go with that. So it's based off your mysticism skill. It's based off of the magic resistance of the lock that is on the chest. Not the chest's magic resistance, the chest body, but the lock on the chest. Its magic resistance, which is going to be primarily based on whatever material that the lock is made out of. Um, as well as there's a factor of the lock complexity value um, gets taken, like it goes against your odds, and things that go towards it, well, at least if you have a positive above 50 value, is your intelligence, willpower, and luck. Um, and yeah, this is I don't know if I explained this much the lock picking formula, but it's it's supposed to get more difficult as the lock complexity goes, or in this case, it actually gets more difficult based on the magic resistance. Whereas with lock picking, it's based on the lock complexity. But lock complexity does have a factor in this because I was having trouble thinking like, how am I going to quote unquote balance that? Even though I know that it doesn't necessarily need to be balanced, but I was like, well, I still want there to be more mostly incentive to actually learn how to lockpick, or at the very least have that as the kind of primary way to properly unlock chests, I guess. And in that case, you can jam the lock if you attempt it too many times. So I was like, well, with magic, if it's just going to be a thing where no matter what, to some extent, you can, if you just spend enough mana on it, which I know is a limit, you have a limited amount of time in game that you're willing to just keep resting to get your mana back. But I was like, you know what? How how are you actually magically unlocking it? This is the kind of logic I'm going by, at least. So, by my logic or reasoning, whatever, I'm explaining it that the actual magical open effect is still actually manipulating the mechanisms within that lock. The like, how else would it really open, I guess? I know, yeah, magic, but it's still doing the tumbler things. It just, instead of doing it through manual manipulation with your physical hands or whatever shit and tools, it's instead doing it through magical, basically telekinesis, I guess. I don't know. Um, so basically that's explaining that even with the magical open effect attempts, you can still jam the lock even with magical open effect. Eventually, I've gotten some ideas for magical effects I can add for like this mod specifically, or at least some that would primarily be made to interact with this mod's stuff, chest and stuff. And one of them, somebody suggested in the Discord, Regineer or Regineer. um, I think that's his username, how he says it, but or that's how I read it, Regineer. Um, he mentioned that maybe there could be a way to have a magical effect that you can actually like unjam a lock, and I think that's not a bad idea. Maybe eventually. I still don't really have any like solid concrete idea for that, but that's feature creep. That'll be for another future update, possibly just an idea. And another one, just to get that out of my head, even though I have it written down, but to be able to actually look into the chest, like basically like exactly like from Ocarina of Time, or I guess also Majora's Mask Zelda games, the Lens of Truth, where if you use the Lens of Truth, you actually can see through, like, I don't know if it's every chest you can see through, or if it's just for that one mini game you can see through the chest. Um, but either way, I think that would be a cool feature at some point, is like being able to cast this kind of spell on it, and then to be able to, before opening it, see what's actually inside, or at least see some kind of glimpse of it, so you have like an idea if it's worth trying to even open or something like that, or if it's not worth trying to destroy in some way because you don't want to destroy whatever. Like, I think that'd be a cool effect. But yeah, so with the magical open effect, is it kind of works weird, and I'm not like 100% happy with it, but for now, I think it's good enough. I think it's good enough. And then after that, the day after, or maybe it was just the same day, but I did some stuff to basically lay a little bit of a groundwork. I guess I did a lot more of that than I thought I did. But mostly lay some groundwork, yeah, for the actual formulas for the rolls and the chances and the stuff on destruction magic using stuff like damage, health, spell projectiles on the chests or disintegrate effects and stuff. And what was this? This was doing the formulas and stuff. And this works in a sort of different way, but kind of similar. Um, well, this is, yeah, that's the loot destruction part. Um, did I do the actual formulas here? I think I did. I feel like I did, but maybe I didn't. I don't know. Yeah, either way, it's something about destruction, your destruction skill, and the magnitude of the damage health spell. And for disintegrate, it is the percentage chance, based on that, basically. And for both, depending on certain things, like the actual, there's like a modifier for what. I'm not too happy with this one, but I just didn't feel like going too crazy into details about it. So I was just like, screw it, just do whatever. There's a modifier based on the element for certain chest types. Uh, Mostly I think metal and wood, basically, instead of going crazy with everything, every different one permutation. So like fire is better against wood, but it's worse against metal or something of that sort. So yeah, there is a factor there. I definitely need to work more on that because I think you need too more powerful of a spell to open a chest with the damage magnitude thing, but the disintegrate's almost too easy. Um, so yeah, that definitely needs work. But I did get that done, and I had to do some like I had to do a lot of tweaking here and there. There's like little bugs that I had to fix that were like causing issues. I think with the open one, I actually did this later on, but I might as well talk about it since I'm on the topic. Um, that the buffs when you actually end the effect, it doesn't end instantly. It just turns the round counter to zero for that actual buff, but it still takes until the beginning of the next round or the end of that round or whatever, for it to actually fully go away. So if you don't, it's weird. So if you don't um, take that into account, then the buff is still on you. So what I had to do was add something that I, for some reason, didn't even realize that was done for a reason in the actual like open effect code for on doors. As I had to put some. Really, it wasn't that hard. I just was like, oh, I didn't realize that. You just have to put like a check at the very beginning of the like loop or whatever. Not so much loop, but the logic part that's just like, okay, if the round counter for this spell effect is zero, then don't do anything. Return right back. Because otherwise, if you don't do that, then I would think that if the round counter is zero, then it should have ended, right? It should be gone, but that's not the case. Is that just because the round counter is zero doesn't mean the spell effect is actually gone yet off of the entity. Um, so yeah, I mean that simple little fix made it so you weren't able to just spam click a chest after getting the open effect and then just spam click it and then keep getting that same chances or whatever with that spell. So now you have to wait until it's a little bit annoying because you have to wait like until the end of the that current round to try again basically. So yeah, it's not perfect, but I'd say it's better than the jank of being able to just spam click and then keep trying. Um, Completed remaining bashing logic and formulas. I'm not gonna read all that, but I probably did do a lot of crap. I don't even remember if I mentioned the stuff involving the loot destruction stuff, but I had done that. Modify version control commit. Mostly version control commit. What was this one about? No, I think this might have been about, yeah. This was making it so I don't even know if I mentioned that yet or if I've done that yet. I don't think I've done that yet. Or I don't think I've talked about that yet. The scrap items or whatever, so that like the armor and weapons would be reduced when they're destroyed, would be reduced to some kind of scrap based on the material they're made out of. Um, and this was to distribute that based on the actual armor and weapons, like that it was made, that it was. So like a tower shield would have more scrap potentially than a gauntlets or something, or a whatever, a buckler, that kind of thing. Code for chest inspection, identification logic. Oh yeah, I did the chest inspection stuff, and this one was quite the. It took me quite a few days to get this crap done, and I'm still not 100% happy with it. This video has already gone on way too damn long, or like way longer than I was kind of hoping it would. Um, but I mean, yeah, like I said, I did a lot of crap in this month's time or whatever for this, so it's a lot of stuff to go through, and how really useful is that? That's what I'm kind of now. I'm kind of even though I'm glad I've been getting a lot of work done on the mod, which is the important part. I'm fairly disappointed that I've basically kind of thrown this like series of making while I'm making it to the right with the wayside, but I kind of realized like, you know, it is surprisingly a pain in the balls to try and work on something and get as much done with it as possible while also making like a video series on it and stuff at the same time. Uh yeah, it's just difficult because there's so many times where I just rather be working on the mod than making a video about it or not recording or whatever and just doing it. And it's not that I don't want to explain this stuff while I'm doing it. It's just it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of effort to do both at the same time and try to do it like explain it fairly well. So yeah, it's like I said, I'm fairly disappointed after a point where this kind of series went, where now I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, let me go through my commit log and show you like some crap. Uh, yeah, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it's better that I still do it at least sometimes, just because I think there is some use to it. But like I said, I kind of didn't expect it to go that way, where it's just like, oh, okay, now I just do whatever, and then it's like, oh yeah, look, here's my commit log that nobody gives a crap, because it's just like, I just did it in the moment. I didn't feel like recording it and then like explaining every single thing as I did it. Um, the logic and stuff behind it. It's just it is a lot more relaxing to just not be recording this and doing this kind of thing. At least I feel. That's why I'm somebody who doesn't like streaming. I guess it's just kind of like, hey, I mean, at the very least, if somebody wanted to look back, they can see like, oh yeah, this commit was done this time, but it doesn't really explain to somebody, be like, oh, that's how they did it and whatever. And I mean, a lot of my stuff is just copy and paste, so it's like not really the most complicated stuff in the world. It's just in that process when you're doing it, it is difficult sometimes to be like doing it as well as trying to explain it, I guess. But maybe that's just me. I don't know. And I mean, I'll probably mostly be actually like showcasing this stuff Uh, More when I'm almost like done with the mod or like ready to release it, just because it's a lot of shit to showcase. Like, I mean, I guess it's not that hard to showcase all at once, and I also don't like using the Unity editor while recording and all this stuff. It's obnoxious, but takes forever to launch. But like, I got the interface, the GUI stuff that I was initially planning on just doing text things, but for some reason I was just like, you know what? I want to make some GUI stuff that looks, you know, decent to my eye, you know. I won't say it looks incredible or anything, but I'd say it's fairly fitting to the game's default GUI stuff, art style, even though that's not like a great thing to go by because it's not exactly the most pretty GUI, it just is one style or whatever. But I did that, so now there's actually a proper GUI with for the inspection and the lockpick thing. There's no traps, like I said, there's no traps or anything yet, and there probably won't be until I don't know when I'll feel like updating that after I release the mod, but I'll have to see. That'll be another can of worms to open up, I guess. But then there's also a GUI for the inspection part, which is I think is probably the more important part for the GUI stuff. So it's like you can actually see the text, and it has like colors. Um, it has what do they call the tooltips? So if you hover over on the mouse, if you hover over with the mouse, it'll show you like what that thing is referring to, and then if you click on it, it'll give a description of what that attribute means and stuff to some extent. But yeah, for a good few days, that was mostly what I was doing was just GUI stuff related to that. And it took me a good few days, like I said, like at least a week, if not 2 weeks probably. Inspection window, custom UI, time and fatigue cost for actions. Oh yeah, I added it so when you do like actually never tested if that worked. I'm pretty sure it works though, but I never really. I've only tested stuff while in God mode, so I'm not. I haven't really checked the in-game clock to see if the time is changing. I probably should do that. Uh, but yeah, at least it should. It's supposed to be giving you skill increases, skill tallies, whatever skill XP. It's still not perfect, but at least it does it for stuff like lockpick attempts and everything like that. Even bashing attempts. I don't think every bash gives you weapon skill, but most maybe or something like that. Uh, and it costs time for lockpicking and some other things. A little bit of time. It's like it's really not that long. Like your speed and your speed attribute, I think reduces that significantly, or reduces it based if it's lower than 50 and all that. Um, there's that. I added in the textures for the junk items that I had made or I added. A lot of them I'm pretty good. I'm pretty okay with, but a lot of them I was by the end I was getting pretty like um tired of doing it. So some of them are kind of low effort, but you know they serve their purpose. It's not perfect, but I think they serve their purpose. Custom junk items. Yeah, I had to do a lot of. I didn't have to do a lot of code for that. Really, there was a little bit of weird quirks here and there. Like I have them all assigned as useless item one item group, and I was using for the scraps at least the assumption, or not so much the assumption, but like yeah, kind of the assumption that the stacking logic in the game would or no, just the logic that every item that had a variant assigned would try to use those variants if you assigned it those, but that is not the case. It only works for certain item groups, such as like jewelry, I think, clothing, definitely, armor, weapons, that kind of thing. But it doesn't check for useless item one things unless you specify, which is what I figured out after a while. I was like, why are the scraps not showing up as different things or they're different textures? I had to specifically override that in the class for that scrap item, and basically say like this is always stackable or something like that, or no, that the variant matters or something, some shit like that. Yes, that was the line. So I had to override the I don't know what you call it, the the parameter. I don't know. I had to override the item parameter inventory texture record and then have it get return current variant instead of whatever it was before, because otherwise it would not change that. It would not care about that variant basically, even if you gave it one. So in this case, it's forcing it to use that variant. So then after that, it properly displayed the texture variant that I was trying to based on the material and stuff. And then it was surprisingly, it worked like perfectly fine. I was like, wow. Did some testing, fixed some bugs, and audio source stuff. Uh, I just did a few little fixes there. And then about a week ago is when I started adding audio stuff or sound clips and stuff and doing the logic related to that and stuff. And this one took me, yeah, I mean, I thought it took me longer than this, but I guess it only took me about a week, which isn't too bad. I had like 115 audio clips, which they're like really tiny, or they're not like super tiny, but they're small. They're short clips. It's like probably on average like 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds. It's like some are like zero point 0.8 seconds, some are like 3 seconds at most. So yeah, they're short clips. Compressed, they only take about like 1.3 megabytes or something, which I don't think is that big. I had to do some stuff that I hadn't done before with the importing them, basically the settings, just like with the textures, the settings in Unity for the metadata. I just kind of assigned what, when I read the actual Unity documents for that stuff, I just kind of assigned what seemed to be fine. Um, for my case, because it's not stuff that's playing like all the time. Like every time you take a footstep, it's not playing. This is just going to be when you're interacting with the chest, which shouldn't be that common. Like it shouldn't be constantly. So I wasn't like, oh yeah, I need these sounds to be loaded constantly or whatever. Just like whatever was good enough, it seemed. I don't know if that's the perfect settings, but hopefully it's not a big deal. But the main thing that might be an issue is the way that I kind of imported these sounds, sort of. Because I was basically copying this method or way of doing it from Dunny of Penwick, the guy who made Penwick Papers, and I've used a lot of his ways of doing stuff because I could tell that he is, from his code, he does know quite a bit what he's doing. It seems, involving like Unity and C Sharp and stuff. At least to some extent more than I do. Um, so I was like, oh, I didn't know you could kind of import assets like that. Like that's helpful. And I wanted these clips because there's multiple clips for each um thing, like kind of thing that I was going for. A lot of the clips kind of come from the bashing stuff, like variants for bashing with different weapons, mostly just not like too fancy, like every weapon type, but just like blunt, bladed arrows, unarmed, like that kind of thing. If it's a wooden chest or a metal chest, lock or locks and everything like that. But then there's a bunch for the actual lock picking part, magic variants for the lock picking part if using the open effect, destruction spells and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a lot of stuff, and I was doing it this way, just kind of making multiple arrays, empty arrays that are then filled when the actual mod gets loaded. Uh, yeah, like around here. When the actual mod gets loaded, then it would just do try get asset and then fill those empty arrays with the audio clips that they're meant to be associated with. And yeah, it's pretty ugly and messy, and I'm sure there's a better way to do it. I don't currently, I mean, I could think of other ways to do it where it's just basically just to make it look nicer, like with loops and stuff. Um, but I decided against it because then I would like, I don't know. I decided against it just because then maybe the names might get messed up if I'm just using like I or whatever the loop number. So I was like, So yeah, I mean, if somebody has a better way that I can kind of do this, or has an idea of a better way that I could do this without like 115 or whatever bullshit entries here, either way, it's not that big of a deal probably, and think I don't think like a few dozen arrays with like just some audio clip references is gonna really do anything to like the person's computer or RAM or whatever. I really don't think it's gonna take up that much like memory or some shit. But I don't know. If somebody has a better way I could do this, I'm all ears. I'm not too upset or whatever. I'm not too like against how it is right now. It's just I could tell it's probably quite the eyesore and probably very ugly or whatever, very amateurish by most standards, but I was like, okay, I'm happy enough with that. And I would show you the audio clips, like I said, but I just don't feel like opening the editor right now. But I will eventually, obviously, showcase the mod working and everything like that more. Just in this video, I just wanted to make this update. But yeah, I did a lot of work to get these audio clips that I wanted to use, and I think most of them sound pretty damn well. Okay, I'm not gonna be like that; they're that amazing, but I think they sound fitting, um, satisfying for the most part enough. The only issue that I have is that some noises are a bit quieter than I'd want, but even when I tried to change the actual like volume level that you're able to change, for some sounds it seemed to work. Like the actual audio would get louder, or I didn't really try quieter, but it would get louder. It seems maybe I was just imagining it, but then for the other ones that were especially quiet, like it wasn't really changing it. Like it made it like almost like 9 times. So maybe there's like a limit of how much you could actually modify that volume or something. Or so I don't know what reason that some of them play, but it's like whatever, it's kind of nitpicky crap, not a huge deal. So if I feel like fixing that or figure out a way to fix that, I will. Besides just editing the audio file, its source itself, and making it louder. But for now, I was like, all right, I'm happy enough with that. But yeah, what I decided to do, I was doing the code. I think this is a smart thing to do. Is I not as I was every commit, I would add the audio files I was adding. I just was doing it separately, so it wasn't such a giant cluster F mess. So I was doing like the code implementation parts as their own commits, and then in the end, I was like, okay, now that I'm fairly happy with this, then I committed one giant commit with all of the added audio files and their metadata and crap. Just a big mess of a commit there, and isolated from the rest of the stuff, so it's somewhat like comprehensible. And yeah, that was, I mean, I did a lot of stuff. Like I did a lot of stuff the past month for the mod, and I'm getting very close. I'm getting very close to releasing it, public release and stuff. I still have a lot of things to do though. But I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I'm getting surprisingly close, thankfully, to a public release I think I'd be happy with. Um, and the next thing that I'm planning on working on is, even though there's other stuff to work on, I think I should probably nip this in the butt uh, now instead of waiting to the very end or whatever. And I'm going to try and get the save data side of things sorted out and hopefully working somewhat. So, like, if you save inside of a dungeon that has chests currently in it, those chests, when you actually load up, those chests will be there with their contents, just like as you'd expect, like loot piles and everything, or corpses and all that. It should load um, as you save that place. It shouldn't just disappear because you saved and then loaded. I don't know how I'm gonna make it work. If I can, maybe it'll automatically work. Maybe with stuff like pen with papers. I mean, not pen with paper. Persistent dungeon. I mean, I don't even know if that still works at this point. I hope it does. It's a cool mod, but it might have some issues there. But besides that, I want it so if you load in the scene or if you load in a dungeon, whatever, or save in a dungeon, a house, whatever that has a chest in it, opened or closed, its contents will be there, its state will be there, its attributes will still be there. So I'm not great with save data, but I'm sure I will be learning. I'm fairly happy that um I don't have it up with me right now, but Penwick Papers does have some save stuff related with saving at least states of game objects in the scene from his mod, his custom object and stuff. So I'm probably gonna once again be borrowing from that or whatever, taking from that and using that as a primary example to hopefully lead me along the way to get that done. Um, after I finish that with the save data stuff, hopefully, and it goes well, um, there's once again still a bunch of stuff that I have to work on, but I'll be even closer after that point. But what will I work on right after that? I'm not certain. Possibly try to balance the formulas more. I definitely have to balance the or like redo. It's mostly placeholder the loot stuff because the materials they just kind of do a dice roll between 1 and 10 or 0 and 10, whatever, to determine the material instead of actually being based on some other factors that make sense to determine like the material rarity and stuff. So I have to do that as well as some other things, balance out the formulas. But yeah, next thing is probably save data, and then hopefully that won't be as hard as it might seem. And then I could just get working on the other stuff as well and just continue on going. But yeah, I didn't show that much in this video, but hopefully, I don't know. I just wanted to do an update because it's been like a month. So hopefully that was interesting or useful. I don't know. But yeah, thanks for watching. And I hope to see you in the next one. Take care.